neuroscientists around the world. My name is Emanuela Bassi, and I currently serve as the social media manager for Black In Neuro. For today, though, I will be wearing the cap of moderator for the sake of this event. So before we start, I want to give a huge thank you to our conference sponsors, including the Allen Institute, the Wu Tsai Neurosciences Institute at Stanford, University of Minnesota Department of Neuroscience and Medical Discovery Team on Addiction, the Alzheimer's Association, Neurosity, and many more. Without their generous support, these events would not be possible. Yesterday, we kicked off BIN Week with a welcome session from the e-board. They walked us through what we've done so far for the year and gave some special announcements of what's to come. If you are unable to attend, no worries. Check out our YouTube page where all of our events from today and the rest of Black in Neuro Week are either available now or will be posted shortly in the coming days. And also, we have a little treat for you guys. In honor of BIN Week 2022, you're able to take 10% off of our Etsy site store with the code BINW22, which could be pasted in the chat. All right. And additionally, if you wanted to share any highlights of things that you've learned today or just would like to talk about on social media, please do so using the hashtag BINW2022, as well as the hashtag for the day, NeuroAcrossTheDiaspora. Okay, so what is NeuroAcrossTheDiaspora? So NeuroAcrossTheDiaspora is a really special day during BIN Week dedicated to highlighting the global presence, experiences, and stories of Black neuroscientists across the world. The African diaspora stretches to Europe, the Americas, Asia, and Oceania, and Black in Neuro spans these continents as well. Because our programming, though, often centers the experiences of scientists from the US, UK, and Canada, we've assembled scientists from beyond these geographies. We believe it is of utmost importance to give a platform to neuroscientists from around the globe and honestly highlight their interests and their insights, and knowledge. Okay. All right, so for this panel event session, I will be primarily asking panelists questions about their experiences as Black neuroscientists not residing in the US, UK, or Canada, as highlighted previously. But I do want to highlight that this is an open conversation, and we encourage all of you in the audience to ask questions using the Zoom chat box feature. At the end of the session, there will also be a more formal Q&A session for the audience to engage in using Zoom's Q&A function. I will also like to note that live captioning and American Sign Language interpreting are available for this event. To turn captions on or off, click the CC or CC live caption icon along the bottom of your window. You can also adjust the size of the font by clicking on the 3 dots at the bottom of your window that say More and select Subtitle Settings. Our sign language interpreter, Vidman Barber, should be pinned on your screen as of right now. But if you experience any issues accessing the captions or interpreters, please message Black in Neuro in the chat. Okay, so now that we've taken care of a bit of housekeeping, we can get started. I would first like to introduce our absolutely amazing panel. Thank you all for being here today. First up, we have Dr. Lorado Mahara. She is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, interested in the genetics of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, as well as the transferability of polygenic risk scores among and across African populations. Next, I would like to introduce Ofure Oko, a Nigerian-born first-generation neuroscientist conducting research in the field of psychiatric genetics at the Max Planck Institute of Psychiatry in Munich, Germany. As a doctoral candidate, she hopes to use her research to shed more light on how the presence of psychiatric risk variants distorts major cognitive domains like emotion. She's lived in Germany for about 18 months now and aims to become a more connecting force in neuroscience between her home country and international organizations. Next up, we have Dr. Ismail Gobadulozi. He is originally from Nigeria and is a doctoral researcher in the Laboratory for Translational Research in Neuropsychiatric Disorders, otherwise known as TREND, at the Institute of Experimental Biology Marceli Nanki in Poland, where he now works on understanding the interplay between metabolism and proteinopathy in the context of neurodegenerative conditions. He is also, fun fact, a nutrition and fitness enthusiast and likes to meet people and travel as well. Okay, and last but definitely not least, I would like to introduce Alexia Ferreira. She is a master's student at the Neurosciences program at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, currently studying Huntington's disease and inflammation. Okay, so now that everyone is introduced, let's jump into the panel event. All right, so first things first, I would like to ask all of you, what do you currently work on or study at your various institutions? And feel free to unmute and go in any order.
suppose I'll go first. Before I answer the question, I just wanted to say that I'm very honored to be invited to be a panel on this discussion, and I'm very excited to be here. So as already sort of indicated in the introduction, I am a postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Cape Town at the Neuroscience Institute there. So I completed my PhD not very long ago, looking at the genetics of schizophrenia in the South African population. And my postdoctoral research is kind of an expansion on this work. So I'm currently working on a project called NeuroGap psychosis. So NeuroGap stands for neuropsychiatric genetics in African populations. And the aim of this project, largely speaking, is to recruit 40,000 individuals or study participants in South Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda. And we have collaborators at the Broad Institute of Harvard and MIT in Boston, US. So the purpose of the study is to try and identify the genetic contributors to psychosis or schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I am also a research fellow in a program called, the acronym is GINGER. It stands for the Global Initiative for Neuropsychiatric Genetics Research, Medication and Global Initiative, so Neuropsychiatric Genetics Education and Research. This program was initiated as the training arm of the overarching study NeuroGap in order to build capacity for researchers in the African continent. I'm also a co-head of the Neuropsychiatric Genetics Group in the Neuroscience Institute at UCT. Yeah, that's kind of broadly what I do.
Cool. Thank you so much. All right, can go on to the next person. Any of you?
Okay, I can go next. Okay, I am a doctoral candidate with the Max Planck School of Cognition in Leipzig, Germany. Started my PhD research in September 2020. So yeah, but the research phase of the program started last year, September. So this is technically my second year, but first year of research. So conducting my research at the Max Planck Institute of Psychiatry in Munich. And for my work, we are currently looking at screening the psychiatric risk variant of major depressive disorders identified by genome-wide association studies, and trying to see which of these have a functional role in regulating how gene regulatory how they actually regulate the transcription levels of the genes. And for this, we use different cell lines, different cancer cell lines as the first step as the models, and then we would further later use neuronal cell lines derived from human-induced pluripotent stem cells, just to make it much more relatable to the human system and how the developing brain goes. For now, it's still in kind of the preliminary stages of the research, but we're slowly moving forward, and yeah, hope for the best.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. All right, so last two, we have Alexia and Israel. Either one, you could go.
So I was trying to be a gentleman. Since Alexia doesn't want to take the floor, I will. Hi, just a very little correction in the pronunciation of my name. My name is Ismail Badamosi. I'm a doctoral researcher at the Nensky Institute, particularly in the translational research for neuropsychiatry disorder lab. It's a translational lab, so My research focuses on understanding the interplay between metabolism and neurodegeneration, particularly in the context of ALS and FTLD. So say, for example, I present you with two patients, one is suffering from, both of them are suffering from ALS, but one is diabetic and the other one is athletic. And I ask you, say, which of these patients has the worst prognosis? You'll probably think the diabetic patient has the worst prognosis, but what we've come to learn from data we've gathered in our lab and from epidemiological studies, we now know that risky metabolic profiles like diabetes, dyslipidemia, even obesity tends to be protective in ALS and FTLD patients, such that it allows this patient to have a slower progression of the disease, even longer survival than normal patients or even athletic patients. So what I'm asking in my research is, how exactly do these risky metabolic profile confer this advantage to this patient? And if we can decipher the interplay between this metabolism and the pathogenesis of this disease, can we then leverage on this interplay to develop new therapeutic approach? So that's what I'm currently doing in Poland. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and Alexia?
Okay, thank you, Milo. Now I'm doing two kind of research because in Brazil, I started my work with Huntington disease and neuroinflammation. So we want to see the relation with neuroinflammation and symptoms, motor symptoms in Huntington disease. But here in Montreal, I kind of work with breast cancer. So here with breast cancer, we are looking for a relation with sensory neurons and the growth of this cancer. So yeah, it's kind of this.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so then on to my next question. We're gonna start at the foundation of things and then get into the real questions. So what does neuroscience and in particular diversity in neuroscience look like in your respective countries?
Here at the Nensky Institute, it's quite diverse because you get to see a lot of people from different backgrounds. For example, my boss is from Pakistan. I mean, that's a clear example. And there are a lot of people from different parts of the world. And it appears to me they make a conscious effort to have scientists from different parts of the world to come to Poland, to the Institute, to either train as a researcher or to be a lab leader or to occupy very important positions in different neuroscience groups to carry out their research. So it's quite diverse. It can be better, yeah, but I mean, it's a gradual process, I think.
All right.
So I'm going to talk about neuropsychiatric genetics specifically because that's my background. And I'm at UCT, so I'll start speaking about that too. So I'm a part of the neuropsychiatric genetics group, and we are a very small group. And the group is largely comprised of young females. I know there's another group at Stellenbosch University, also in the Western Cape in South Africa, who are also doing research on psychiatric genetics. And as far as I can tell from the website, we haven't had a lot of interaction with this group or a lot of collaboration, but as far as I can tell from their website, they're also a fairly young, sort of female dominant group. There are other units at the South African Medical Research Council, who are also doing similar research. I don't quite know their demography. Yeah, but in general, it kind of seems like, I mean, the field is very new. So the people who are doing this kind of research at the moment seem to be largely young females. In terms of sort of ethnic backgrounds, I wasn't sure what sort of technical terms to use here. Are we talking race? Are we talking ethnicity? What are we talking culture? Yes, still very sort of a touchy subject, I suppose. So, you know, without being sort of too specific, I think the majority of the people who are doing the research, even though it's females, the majority are non-Black. So I guess it's still a long way to go in terms of representation and inclusivity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you can go next.
Oh, sorry. You can go.
Okay, thank you. For me, we are compared to back home, within Germany, neuroscience is quite diverse. We have people from various fields, different countries in particular here. Although I would say it's still a bit skewed when it comes to race representation. But for gender, we do have a very fair representation as at now. And judging from some talks I've been able to attend, some webinars, some trainings, I see that, yeah, representation is something that is welcome. So that's a good, like some kind of very good, a kind of the first step forward. So yeah.
Okay, in Brazil, I guess diversity have a long way to go, because in high positions, we can see a gender, you can see women, but white women, and we don't have a lot of cultures in the lab. So to me, it's very strange to say it, but when I moved to Montreal, was my first time sharing a bench with a Black woman doing experiments. I never did it in Brazil. So yeah, to me, it's really complicated to talk about it, because diversity in Brazil is in the science. It's really because it's most part white men or white women, and we try change it, but it's a very long way.
No, I definitely agree, because like it's one thing for places to say, oh, like we want to try and include like different kinds of people from different races and like backgrounds like in our areas, but it's another thing for actual implementation, because diversity like is what spurs on the next generation into getting into these positions. So I definitely agree that the work is not finished and definitely will take some time. But yeah, it's important to do. All right, and then I want to backtrack into another question a little bit. So could each of you, starting with Alexia, tell us, how did you embark on the path to becoming a neuroscientist in your country? Like, what was that like? What did you go through the whole shebang, if you could?
Okay, I started actually working with bacterial culture, and after some time, I discovered a project with reprogramming in neurons. We did a reprogramming of astrocytes in neurons, and I learned about it and started to work with neuroculture, and then fall in love with it. And yeah, kind of, I spent a lot of time in the lab and learning about it, and I just keeping do it, But yeah, all the time it was just me, the only Black person in the lab. So yeah, here in Montreal it's different, but in Brazil, yeah.
Well, for me, I would say it started when I was a little girl. Let me go way back. So I usually play this, kind of play the role of a doctor with my peers then. And I would pretend to be the doctor to treat everyone. But one thing I discovered as I grew was I was very curious about how, why I was different from my siblings, and we grew up in the same like environment and everything. There were certain things they could do that I couldn't do, even when I tried. And there was certain things that I could do that they couldn't do. So I was quite curious, and I decided to, okay, I would want to like explore more on, okay, what is within me that makes me so different, or why are we so diverse within the same household and everything. So I unfortunately couldn't go to medical school because I wasn't, but I actually got but I was able to get admission into the basic sciences to study anatomy. So that was the step forward for my bachelor's. And okay, after that, during my study there, it was a good thing because I was kind of exposed to how, okay, the lifestyle people choose actually would affect their bodily responses later on when it actually came to a posture, degeneration, how you maintain your spine, what happens and everything. So I kind of really got to learn that. But when I was done, I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel like I knew so much to help me to the next phase. So I went for to do my master's, still again in the same field, anatomy, because I really wanted to know how does the body work. So that was when I was able to come to the field of epigenetics, kind of neurodevelopment, trying to kind of merge them together using animal models then. So that was the first step forward, because then I was able to see, okay, neurodegeneration in cells, how does it happen? How does pollution cause this? And what does it lead to? What kind of traits do we see in people who actually suffer from different things? So for my PhD, I was then opportune now to get the sponsorship from the Master School of Cognition during the first year to be able to further into what I really wanted to, like more to the basic level of the molecules, and then trying to merge, okay, some environmental factors do happen. They affect not just the organs of the body, how the cells develop and everything, but neurons, how do the transmission occurs? What causes them to fire wrongly? Something like that. So the curiosity, I would say, from when I was little led to something, because now I'm starting to actually really understand, okay, I may have grown up with my siblings within the same household, but some things, some different, there were certain factors and still are that would make me behave in a different way from them. And yeah, that's a summary of my story.
Thank you, thank you. Curiosity always takes us a long way, like here we are today. Cool. All right, Dr. Mahara, if you could.
Sure. I wanted to add something to the previous question, if you'll allow me. Thanks. So I was saying that the research right now seems to be being driven by young females, and I just wanted to make the point also that the people who tend to be sort of principal investigators on these projects are very old white men. So there's quite a very big divide. And so again, just re-emphasizing that gap and how much further we still have to go. But anyway, to move on to your current question, my journey to getting here, I think more than anything, was serendipity. So I did my undergraduate in medical microbiology, and then my master's in medical virology. So I was doing research on HIV, looking at how antibodies develop in response to the virus, with the aim of, I'm doing research towards vaccine development. So I was coming to the end of my master's. I was trying to figure out what to do. At that point in time, I hadn't decided whether or not I wanted to do a PhD. So I was looking for work. So I come from a very small province in the center of South Africa. And what I knew at the time was that I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay in the Western Cape, in Cape Town. So I needed work to be able to sustain myself. So I applied for work within the institute that I was doing my research in. And I got a job as a technical officer in the Department of Genetics. And there I started working on the project that I eventually did my PhD on, which is called SACS, which is genetics of schizophrenia in the African Xhosa. So while I was working in the lab, I was literally processing bloods, extracting DNA that would eventually be sequenced and genotype for the genetic analyses. So while I was working, I then, spoke to my boss at the time. This project was just starting and they were looking for a PhD student. So I expressed interest and I got the PhD position. So, and at the time, this project was, it was on 2,000 individuals, study participants recruited here in South Africa. And at the time, it was the biggest of its kind on the continent. So it was a very exciting project to be a part of. So naturally, I said yes and started doing this research in schizophrenia. And that's kind of how my journey in neuroscience started. And I don't regret. I'm very happy with where I landed.
Thank you so much. And also Dr. Gradomosi, please, as well. And feel free to just correct me if I'm ever butchering.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll get used to it. So it's Badamosi again. So I've talking about my career and how I got to where I am right now, doing the kind of research I'm doing. I've had quite an interesting trajectory. So I think it all really started for me when I joined the graduate program after my bachelor's in anatomy. So I went back for my master's and I joined this research team, and we're doing a lot of research on understanding how environmental toxins affect the brain and behavior. Concurrently, I was also working with another PI whose focus was on addiction. So this really piqued my interest, and eventually in my master's thesis, I tried to understand how addiction to something like nicotine affects behavior, the up and downsides of it, and how you can possibly mitigate the downside while maintaining the use of nicotine using locally available medicinal plants to mitigate this downside effect. So while doing that, after I finished my master's, I went on to join the graduate program there in the University of Ilorin, where I did my master's. And I continued to work with some of these teams, and we continued our research basically in environmental toxin and using plants or medicinal plants and their neuroprotective effects. So I was opportune to then move to Vienna, where I got a fellowship to the University of Medical University of Vienna. So where I joined pharmacology. So basically it was I had been using basic techniques like animal behavior, histology, immunohistochemistry, and the likes back in Nigeria before I went to Vienna. So when I got to the medical university, where the primary techniques was a lot that has to do with molecular pharmacology, it was a little bit challenging. It was eye-opening, but a little bit challenging, jumping from very basic technique to a little bit advanced technique. So it took a while to catch up. And after I was able to bring myself up to speed in about 3 months, I really became very fascinated with molecular neuroscience. So it was during this period that I began to seek opportunity on how to, advance my career in that direction. And while I was doing that, I came across this opportunity to come join this lab where I am now in Poland with Elijah White, one of the top neuroscientists here. And and I find this research not just interesting, but very important because the research is very translational. I mean, at the most basic level, going from the bench to bedside. So this really piqued my interest in this very research I'm doing now, that the kind of research I'm doing is not just something that's just going to end up in a publication, but something that has real value in the long run. So yeah, so I went from basic research in Nigeria to pharmacology in Vienna, then back to molecular neuroscience here in Poland. So that has been my trajectory.
Wow, thank you so much. Before I go on to the next question, I just have to say it. You guys are absolutely so cool and insightful. Just hearing all of your stories and your journeys, like as someone that's like not at that stage yet, it's just really inspiring and awesome to know that like this is a possibility for someone like me. So thank you. Okay, all right, I will go to the next question. Dr. Vadamosi, you spoke about challenges just a little bit, and that's kind of a good segue into this next question I'm about to ask.
Yeah,
So, what is the most difficult thing about engaging in neuroscience, specifically neuroscience research in your country, per se? Could be.
So for me, I'm going to talk from a very personal point of view. Like I said, I come from a background where research is a little bit, not there yet compared to how it is done here. So my training has been in very basic techniques. So, for example, when I got to Poland, before I got to Poland, I'd never done qPCR, for example, not once, not ever. And this is one of the routine techniques that is being done in the lab. So I could understand the shock my PI then expressed when he found out that as experienced as I was as at that time, I had never done a technique as routinely used as qPCR. So one of the challenges for me was the challenge always is to try to catch up, and it's usually a lot of work because I have to put in a lot of time to not just understand the for example, the theoretical basis of some of these procedures, then I have to put in extra time to catch up with the practical experience so that I can then apply them in my actual research. So yeah, because there are quite a number of gaps in my experience as a molecular neuroscientist. So it's always a lot to try to apply new techniques that are very important for my research. So the challenge is learning these techniques and trying to apply them within sometimes a very short period of time. Yeah, so that's it for me.
And for you, Dr. Mahara, potentially?
Yeah, so I mean, from a personal standpoint, quite similar to Dr. Vadamosi. So as I mentioned, I came from a completely different background in virology, and then I had to start learning genetic techniques, and that was really difficult. And it wasn't just made difficult by the fact that it was new to me, it was also made difficult by the fact that there aren't a lot of people with those kind of skills to be able to provide support. So my PhD was quite challenging, I guess, from that respect personally, but also from a sort of a broader context, and not just in South Africa, but also in the projects that I've worked on that have been multinational. So the NeuroAcross project that I'm currently working on is again, South Africa, Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya. So we have collaborations between these countries. And some of the sort of difficulties or limitations that have come up is limitations to access to resources. So in the lab that I was working on before starting my PhD, it was sort of well established to be able to do DNA extractions, collect biological samples and do DNA extractions. But some of the other countries, so some of the countries were not, didn't have labs that were set up to do that sort of thing. And the kind of analyses that we do require high performance computers and clusters. And for the most part, most of the sort of collaborating countries that we worked in weren't quite set up to do that. And it's still sort of an evolving, getting better, but very, very slowly issue. Yeah, I just also want to go back and just re-emphasize the insufficiency in training. There really aren't a lot of people on the African continent specifically who are doing this kind of research. So it's really important, to build capacity in that respect.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And for you, Fure and Alexia, either one?
For me, my challenge was similar to theirs because I had to change fields, sort of. But the good thing for me was that the lab that I'm actually currently working now, they actually have good support system because they know that, okay, it's just the first year of my research, and I would need some time to adjust, not just to the research. The research is one thing, but I actually come to actually get to know that what happens around also would affect how you perform when you go to work. So professionally, yes, very good support. Personally, very good support also. No one is overly judgmental because that can be really demoralizing if you think about it. So, and one good thing is when I first came, I was really scared to like do things because I didn't want to like mess up. So I was shying away from a lot of things because the background I actually previously had was good, but it wasn't really solid enough for this next stage. But it actually prepared me for what was to come, which was a very good thing. So I didn't want to really do much around. I prefer to maybe just watch and then try to process it in my mind. But I had supervisors who would tell me, don't be scared of making the mistake. And one good thing that I know that I actually had previously before coming, which was, it's a good thing, but it's a bad thing at the same time, is if I do something I'm not comfortable with or I have doubts about, I would definitely say it out so that someone would tell me, okay, this was right, or maybe do it this way some other time. So that was one good thing that really helped me learn so far and not get depressed in like, I'm struggling to adjust to the lab, I'm struggling to adjust to the people within the society and everything. But having that strength of people who are actually kind of who are very supportive to push you on and tell you, don't be scared, do it this way. Okay, yeah, you messed up here, maybe do it this way. You can get it better if you do it this way, was really a good thing for me. Yeah. And sorry, one more thing, depending on the aspect of neuroscience one may want to specialize in, there's the wet lab part of things, the computational part of things, but there's also the clinical part of things also, because I've kind of met with people who would want to like interact with, they want to go much more clinical than like probably experimental stuff. Within the country where I currently reside, you may have some little challenges with maybe language or trying to shift into the new culture. But that's not something that one thing I would want to really mention, that it's not something that should like make one actually refrain from coming here. It's something that you would be able to adjust to because you have people that would support you to move on. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. I resonate heavily with support systems because they prevent you from getting inside your own head, because things like imposter syndrome and not feeling like you're supposed to be like where you are can creep in so easily, especially when like you're in a space on your own. So yeah, definitely important. And also for you, Alexia?
Yeah, I guess in Brazil, the first difficult thing is the language, because in Brazil, we do not speak English, just Portuguese. So the first challenge when you go to neuroscience is understand the articles, the research, all the things, because you don't speak English. Also, the investment in neuroscience, because it's not like tropical medicine, because these are areas very explored in Brazil. Neuroscience there's not fast results, so it's not don't receive a lot of investment. And also in Brazil, with the actual the current government, we don't have investment in almost nothing. So I guess these two things in Brazil and neuroscience, it's more challenging when you're starting, the investment and language, because it's a problem in the country. But also for us, it's not only investment and language things, because as I said before, you probably will be the only Black person in the lab, and you can hear something about, I don't know, your hair, your color, and you have to handle with results, research, and also this thing. So I guess this is a big challenge when you started in science.
Sorry, if I may add to what I already said. So I have this analogy I used to describe my career trajectory. So going from basic research to molecular pharmacology to molecular neuroscience. So it felt like a fish in water, coming out of water, learning to walk. From learning to walk to learning to fly. This is so a evolution that took years, eons of years. So that was how it felt for me. So it's challenging, yeah, but like one way or the other, I managed to overcome this by putting in the work. And one thing I learned is one may not be able to teach motivation or interest, but skills can be taught. And for as long as skills can be taught and you're ready to learn, any of these challenges can be overcome. If you don't mind, very quickly, I would like to answer a question that I see here. Is that okay? Directed to me. So somebody is asking what's qPCR. So I'm not going to dwell too much on it, but basically qPCR, which stands for quantitative real-time polymerase chain reaction, is a molecular biology technique that is used to measure the amount of DNA or RNA, as the case may be, in a sample relative to another one. So allows you to know the level of gene expression of a target gene. If you want me to go into the nitty-gritty of these, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to provide you with more details.
So true. And we have a few more questions from the audience as well. The first coming from Betty Bakele. She says, so for panelists who are studying or working away from their home countries as of now, how do you plan to contribute to the growth of neuroscience research in your perspective home country? And what challenges do you foresee actually implementing this or going about this?
Okay,
So
okay, thank you. Yeah, so for me, I actually came here to Germany with the mindset of, yes, I would be able to give back to Nigeria and actually help with the growth of the neuroscience within Nigeria. And how I actually plan to do that within the first year and also now of my move to Germany, I actually started getting more kind of involved in all these webinars, talks, some things that would expose me to how research is done here within Germany and the formalities that it would take and certain grants that you could use as if a kind of like to collaborate, so to speak, and how to go about it. It's a bit time consuming, I may say, like I would say, because it doesn't directly pertain to like what I'm kind of doing now. And some people would actually partake in those kind of trainings when maybe they are towards the end of maybe the fourth year of their kind of doctoral program and all. But I actually feel starting now would give me a better chance to know how to go about it, the steps I have to take, the milestones, what I have to put within like in place to actually make sure that those collaborations do take place, and how I would be, what I need to get the because some of this some of the grants which I've currently seen now, there are certain criteria you have to meet. So I believe the earlier like I actually start now to try to meet up with those, the better it would be, because I cannot like on within myself, by myself, change the form of neuroscience within, it's not possible. It takes everybody. So there's a way we would have to merge that, and try to bridge the gap. So that's just my own plan.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I'm also a Nigerian like Ofuri, and we kind of face the same challenge. So like I mentioned earlier, the kind of research I was exposed to at the beginning of my career was very basic, although it served as the very fundamentals to the knowledge I currently have. So what I'm trying to do, or what I've been doing, first off, for example, is to be as informed as possible, because information is key. You can only tell what you know. And what I've tried to do is to get information that are very important, that are very that would be very advantageous to the community where I come from, and I try to relay this information to my peers, to people that look up to me, either directly or via my social media, by posts, telling them about the available grants or opportunities that they can key into to advance their own career. Then back in Nigeria, I used to work in a lab where I uh, process tissues, for example. So one of the things I also try to do is whenever I go back to Nigeria, I organize small seminars. These seminars to try to provide trainings to young ones, just to let them at least have some basic understanding of some techniques that they should know in the event that they want to pursue a career in the direction that I have followed. And another thing I've tried to do is to also put myself in position that I can also try to help these people. For example, I was able to join the initiative of the ISN ambassador program, where I'm able to use that to bring people from out there to my community, to also, trade them and avail them information that can help them better their career. By and large, I make sure at every point in time there is an opportunity that I know would benefit people from where I come from. I try to relate back to them.
Thank you so much. Those are really cool initiatives, because there's so many bright minds everywhere, but it's just a matter of access and opportunity being open and available for them to actually take.
Exactly the point. I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. So, but when you know and you're smart to take this opportunity, then, I mean, you set yourself down a path to excel already.
And then also, you guys are also welcome to any of the audience questions that come about. You can answer them in the chat as well, instead of unmuting. But any other responses to the question, just about how you foresee yourself contributing to research, neuroscience research specifically in your home country, or anything you see or saying? Okay. All right, we can jump into the next question. The second question is also another question from the audience. So this comes from Aminata, who is from the Ivory Coast, and she asked, so while growing up on the subcontinent, for this person, it was hard to see or address mental health disorders. Have you had a hard time recruiting patients to your studies, if you guys do any clinical work, and especially from more ethnically diverse groups? And if so, how did you overcome these hurdles, especially, or ethically can be either race or ethnic groups in South Africa?
I'll take a stab. Thank you so much for your question, Amanita, and I think it's a very important one too. So I remember while I didn't know anything about mental illnesses or mental illness disorders growing up, and I remember in our community there was a guy who, looking back, I think had a mental illness, and at the time people just you just called him crazy, but in a very dismissive way, instead of trying to help him or seek health services. So I think the issue that you're talking about is quite widespread. So for the projects that I've worked on, the first one being sex and now NeuroGap, you don't just go into the community and start the recruitment process. I mean, as you rightfully said, that mental illnesses have been associated with sort of supernatural abilities. And there's this sort of belief that, first of all, there's a mistrust with scientists. Second of all, when you come into the community and you're saying to people that, we want to study schizophrenia or whatever, we're going to take your blood, then they are very hesitant, because what are you going to do with this blood? Are you going to use your blood to bewitch us? Or like, what are you wanting to do with our blood? Because blood is sacred. So what we've had to do with the projects that I've worked on is to establish a community advisory board. So what happens then is you gather people from the community that you're wanting to recruit from. So there's obviously people who aren't scientists, but very involved in the community. And sometimes also depending on the study setting, you'd have to get or speak to the community leader. So that's community leaders also in sort of rural area settings. So you engage with the community leader, explain to them in layman's terms what research you're wanting to do, why you wanting to do it, how it's going to benefit the community, and that sort of thing. And just sort of beyond trying to explain like the research that you were doing, it's also been very difficult to explain the concepts, like what is DNA, why do you need to get it from blood, and that sort of thing. Yeah, so I think what's been essential and very helpful is this establishment of the community advisory board. So people in the community as well as the scientific panel. Yeah, what's also been helpful, talking about sort of cultural and ethnic backgrounds, is having people who do the recruitment speak the same language as the people in the community. That's been really, really helpful. Yeah, so a community advisory board and speaking people's language. It's more approachable that way.
Thank you so much. No, language is definitely something of utmost importance, because if you're not like coming to the level where someone is through their language and using that bridge to communicate, there's no way you're going to get your point across. And I also love the involvement of the community advisory board. Like, that's so amazing that you're not just like excluding that group of people, because they're essentially the ones allowing for like the research to happen. So I think it's really amazing. Yeah. And then, okay, another question I had was, so for all of the panelists, any of you can mute at any time, but are you able to find a safe space in the countries in which you've moved to? How has it been just simply integrating into the systems that your countries have in place, whether it be finding like support in the workplace or just like networking with other people, or even like simply making friends? How have you gotten to go about that?
Okay, there was something I was hoping to an experience I was hoping to share. So when I was in Vienna, when I moved to Vienna, I'm a Nigerian, and Nigerians, I come from the southwestern part, and people there are really friendly. You get by with almost anyone, you can talk to anyone, and the way with things are quite different. And when I moved to Vienna, it was very different. People there were very reserved. I mean, very, very reserved. So it was quite difficult, just making friends. So for the most part of my time when I was in Vienna, I was always in the lab, just trying to go for a run or something. So when I was trying to move from Vienna to Poland, I I had this talk with my professor then, and I asked him, what should I expect? I mean, comparing Austria to Poland, and he kind of prepped my mind. He said, Ismail, you're a black man. Wherever you go, you're going to be racially profiled. Just be prepared for the worst. They said in Poland, they are a lot more maybe racist than they are in Vienna, but just keep an open mind. Don't be surprised when you see these kind of things happen. And on getting to Poland, actually, it was the exact opposite I experienced, because the Polish people were not as reserved as the Viennese. I was able to make friends easily. But one thing I learned in moving around is this, that when you get to these places, one very good thing one should try to do is to learn the language of the locals. When I just go to Poland, each time I approach a local speaking English, they kind of find it a little bit offensive. But when I made it a point to learn some basics of the language and I approach a local with speaking their language like Polish, yeah, I mean, they find it very, interesting, and they want to engage you even more, even teach you their language. So one way I was able to get around easily was to learn the language, and I have to say Polish is really difficult. So, but either ways, I try to pick up some words and try to learn the Polish language, and it became really easy for me going from place to place and like that. For me, a safe space is always the gym for me. I exercise a lot. I like to go to the gym. So anytime I find myself in a new place, the first thing I want to look for is the gym. Because at the end of the day, when I'm tired of lab work and all that, the where I go to relieve the stress is at the gym, just do some exercise and just get into that zone and forget about the world for a second. So that's the kind of uh place I have for me that I consider safe. Yeah, I'll stop talking now.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. And for you, Alexia, what is it?
Montreal is my first time out of Brazil. So here, when I arrived with this girl, Michelle, black girl that I share the bank to do experiments. It's easy because she also speaks Portuguese, so it's easy to us make this link. And also in my lab here, I have two Brazilian girls, so easy also. But in Brazil, I'm from northwest of Brazil, and to do my master's, I moved to the south of Brazil. Brazil is a very big country, so in the south it's so different from the northwest, and it was really hard to make friends and feel at home in the south. And but out of the pandemic, I moved to the south in the beginning of pandemic, so it was really hard. I don't know. I guess can be hard in some place, and others will be easier. But I really don't know because I'm a lucky girl, I guess. I every place I found people that make me feel at home. Could we not be all the people, but one, two, I will feel at home with them. So yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet. No, people are such like a core element of like your experience anywhere. Like, yes, like a place can have like attractions, like your work, your research, like what you do. But like even people just like simply like taking you to lunch and being like, oh, you want to come with us to like go like try like this new place means a lot. So definitely resonate with that as well.
Yeah. Also, when you found people like you, because here, listening you guys, I'm just wondering. Oh my God, I can do more. I can be more, and it's hard sometimes realize it because it's not so common. But here, I really think about it. So thank you very much.
Mhm. Absolutely. So happy to have you. All right. Then another question that I have is, so languages come up a lot. Kind of going to touch back on that. For all of you, in regards to language, like where did you have like classes like before you arrived in your country? Did you just like start picking up like words and phrases from like locals you interacted with? What was that like first like interaction, I guess, with like when you went to like a grocery store or like a gym or anywhere? Can you just expand on that a bit?
Okay, so before I came to Poland, I made it a point to use some of these mobile application to learn some of these words, but it wasn't exactly easy. So at some point I got really tired of it, so I stopped it. So uh when I got to the institute where I work now, they're kind enough to avail you a teacher who teaches the language because they reckon also the language is quite difficult. So if you're interested in learning the language, yeah, so you just join the classes. So I make an effort out of my very busy schedule to attend classes to to learn this language, irrespective of how difficult it may seem. And yeah, and that has been it for me, basically.
For me, I would say the language difference. I didn't exactly deter me so much at first, because I'm back at home. We have multiple ethnicities, very diverse. So different languages, different people with their own cultural backgrounds, which is good. But at the same time, it could cause differences in perception on how you see things. It may be different from how I actually see things. The good thing for me, though, is that we're actually the place where I do work now. We have this very multinational a kind of collaboration. So you have people from different countries working together. So everyone respects the differences in the language and tries to be more like to be more like accepting on, okay, if I do things this way, and I've kind of noticed something though, that being Black amongst white different white colleagues, it may seem as a disadvantage at times, but at the same time, it's if you look at it from a different perspective, it could also be somehow like a blessing because of the uniqueness. When I first came, I saw, okay, there were some kind of perception, like some people had different some different views on how things should be done, how they write, how they speak. And if you try to decipher it, it may be a bit of kind of somehow kind of it may seem discriminating. But if you look at it from a different a kind of perspective and know that, okay, this person, that's the best way they could try to express themselves, you would not feel so bad about it and you would move on. And there were some people that actually sounded a bit harsh when I came, but they are like my best friends now, because I saw them from a different light. And to try to like integrate and all, I sing better than I actually speak. I love to sing. It keeps me calm. So I actually joined some little community choir. They speak German when they talk, and I try to pick what they say, but they actually sing the songs with English, just the common gospel songs. So with that, I actually feel so peaceful, trying to like put myself in the midst of different foreigners, but at the same time, trying to like do what I know how to do best. So that was one safe place. The same time, I actually tried to learn the language a little bit before I came here, but not so rigorously because I was somehow busy and all. Now I'm taking part-time classes and like still trying to make myself more familiar with how things are done here, because I believe it's how I would feel happy working here the more. So yeah.
Oh, definitely. Wait, that's so cool. You're in a choir. So cool. I'm seeing people. Okay. Another question that I have for you guys. Well, this is actually coming from an anonymous spectator, but they're just wondering, how do you guys navigate balancing relationships with like partners, just like anyone, alongside your research in academia? How does that balance filter in?
It's difficult. That's the summary. Okay, when I first came to Germany last year in January, because I couldn't travel September, I was still dating then, and and my boyfriend then, he was the one, he really supported me all through. He did not say, okay, since you are traveling out, we have to break up. Maybe it was because both of us knew where we're actually going, and we actually really wanted to be together. So he came to my house, he helped me pack up. I went to the airport, everything. We stayed apart for a year plus. Yeah, like almost 1 year. But last year, December, we got married. And now he's here with me, and we're trying to still find a way for him to actually be more resident here, or it's just mutual, how do I put it? Mutual respect, kind of like trying to put yourself within the other person's shoes and know that, okay, this person, I'm believing that this person is doing his or her like best to make the relationship work. And one thing is that I actually get to understand that some people are in time zones that are totally very different, like very different. For me, I did not have that kind of situation, which is good, because I, like within Nigeria and Germany, it's just 1 hour. Yeah, most depending on the season. So, but there are some people that have 5 hours that have, and it's really difficult. But if you know that you are pursuing something, it's a way to like to also find stability, because if you are moving to a new place, you still have someone who reminds you of what makes you you. How can you be better? It's very comforting also, but summary is difficult. Let nobody tell you different.
Thank you so much. And also congratulations. That's so cool.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna build on what Ofer just said. I'm no relationship expert, but one thing I've learned is long distance relationship is almost impossible to maintain. But what I've learned is this: just for as long as you keep the communication line open, you're open, constantly talking about possibilities, constantly discussing the challenges of the relationship, constantly reaching out and trying to make sure you find a way to achieve the ultimate goal of being together. I think one way or the other, you're going to find a way to make things work out. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it is hard. But I have found, I mean, I'm going to talk about the whole time management thing that people roll their eyes at, but it's very important. And also, it's, you don't have the same kind of balance throughout the whole journey. Obviously, when you're starting off, specifically thinking about starting off a PhD, in the early stages, you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to do specifically, like what aims you want to accomplish, trying to put together your research proposal. So that can be a little stressful, and maybe then you don't have a lot of time to socialize. And then it kind of sort of slows down a little bit when you're getting into, if you're doing lab work, then, figuring out or ordering reagents and that sort of thing. So maybe then you have a little bit more time to socialize and stuff. And then towards the end, obviously, there's no time there because you've got to wrap it up. You've got to put in the hours to get it done and put it out. So it really varies on what stage of the research you're at. One of the things that has helped me is sort of trying to combine. So I try as much as I can not to work on weekends. So weekends are my time. And even then, sometimes you try to get sort of combine work and pleasure. And what I mean by that is I have been fortunate to have a sort of a network of other female PhDs. So, you meet a Black female PhD student in your institution, and then they introduce you to somebody else who's also doing a PhD. So we have a PhD support group. So we get together ever so often. And when you do get together, it's not at the university, it's not anywhere close to work. We really take that time also to explore the city. So we go out to a nice wine farm here, a nice restaurant there. So just like time management and just like having a network of people who are going through the same experience as you is really helpful.
Thank you so much. I love the exploration part always, because you always like come across something you haven't seen and you're like, why didn't I see this earlier? All right, and I'm gonna start wrapping things up a little bit, but before I do,
If you don't mind, Okay, sorry. So I'm just reading this question here. I don't know. I just go to the question and answer segment. This question about techniques in Nigeria and how what advice for those that probably trying to embark on the same journey as something like my career. So this is what I've learned. Yes, like I said earlier, you can't teach motivation, but you can teach skill. Yeah. Uh, as much as possible, be sincere with whoever you're going to be working with. Be sincere with who you are working with, because if you don't know, simply come out to tell people you're working with that I don't know this technique, but yes, I'm willing to put in the work to learn. Because if you put up a facade, one that looks like, oh, I have this skill, I have that skill, especially when you're trying to put up an attractive CV just so that the API can consider you for a position, then you may be in a lot of trouble if you get to that lab and half of what you have written on your CV, you can't even do them. You understand? A lot of times we are equipped with theoretical knowledge in Nigeria, but it's usually a different game when you get to the bench and it's time to execute some of these things you have been taught theoretically. So my advice for you, try to stay updated, be sincere, watch YouTube videos, they help too. I mean, they hasten the process of learning, and just put in the work as much as possible. There's no way to fill in the gap other than putting in the work. So if you're lucky to have a peer who, despite your deficiencies, quote unquote, is willing to take you up because you show the zeal, the passion to want to do the work, then make sure you put in the work and be sincere. Okay, I don't know this. I have this challenge. I need this help. Ask, talk, and be open.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You kind of like started answering the next question. It's totally cool, but this is for everyone, the whole panel. If you could say anything to an aspiring neuroscientist who is tuning into this event right now, what would you say? Any advice, pieces of things that you heard from other mentors that were in your corner? And we could start with Alexia and then like go around.
Okay, I guess first thing was to be take care, keep your mental health. You know, this is very important, and listen advice from the experienced one, and you know, you can do it. You just need time. In the beginning, it's really hard, but with time, with practice, you can do it. So, and if you need help, you can ask me. If I can help you, I will do it. So I don't know. I guess I say it.
Thank you.
For me, I would say you should try to acknowledge your flaws if you have any, and don't be scared of failing. Denying one's flaws is one thing that is really, it's like deceiving yourself of what's, okay, flaws are not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like you are not, like, you don't really know how to go past this at this point in time. But if you acknowledge them and then you are focused on pushing past them, you will definitely push past them. So this means you would be able to to do things that would exceed what you think you are capable of, which is very surprising. You may, like when I came, I had to start learning computational things. I knew I could do these things previously, at least I had the potential, but I usually shy away from them. I don't like to talk in public at all. You have to, even if you pay me nothing, I don't. I run away because I feel I cannot. I prefer to write. I prefer to do this. And I don't like to try things when I know, especially that it would affect so many other people, because moving from a small lab, I came to a big lab where you prepare things that so many people use. You do things that's many, so it's not just you that is going down, you're dragging people with you. So I was scared of even trying to, but acknowledging that, okay, this is what I can do very well. I can do this better, but I don't know how to, like he just said, it's one way to start moving forward. And from where you are now to you are capable of actually getting to where you want to be, if at all you just don't lose faith that you are not capable. Trust me, you are capable.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And you could just be like, oh man, like, what am I gonna do? Like, mess up like things for everyone else? Like, is everyone like depending on me for XYZ? You know, keep going. Yeah. Anyone else?
So
Yeah,
for me, okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. I mean, I think there are sort of personal things to get through with the whole, believing in yourself and keeping going and keeping motivated. There are people who have come before you that have done it, so there's really no reason why you shouldn't be able to. But from a sort of a more practical standpoint, I think first you must be very clear about, if you're thinking about a degree, for instance, you must be very clear about what it is that you want to accomplish, be very, very clear about your aims, be very clear about whether or not you can achieve those aims, taking into consideration the resources that you have available. Be very clear about what kind of support is available to you, and if the institute you're wanting to sign up with has the ability to provide you with the kind of support you need. But if you'll allow, there's a question in the chat that I'd like to answer by Christian. Is that okay?
Sure. Just real quick.
So her question is about the difficulty for capacity building in countries, in and between countries that are developing, and what are the barriers to building capacity between these countries. So Kristen, yeah, I do agree that there is, it's very difficult to build capacity between developing countries. Firstly, because of funding. So most of the funding that we get is from the US, from the National Institutes of Health, and often with projects that are funded, it is required, it's mostly the case that you have to have a PI who is also from the US or Europe. So then that creates a barrier of sort of intercontinental collaboration. The second thing also sort of related is a lot of the research, and I'm speaking specifically about neuropsychiatric research, has been done in European ancestry populations by European ancestry individuals. And I guess that's part of the reasoning for having, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. So it's done mostly in European ancestry populations by European ancestry individuals. So most of the publications that come out are from the global north. And perhaps that's part of the reason why the grants from the NIH and MIH require to have this sort of global north, global south collaboration. So again, it's still very limiting for developing countries to be able to collaborate. But I'm now thinking about the H3 Africa consortia. So I was about to say then the alternative, maybe not alternative, but the thing that we can do intercontinentally or as developing countries is to sort of join these international consortia. So there are so many. And right now I'm thinking about the H3 Africa project. So H3 Africa stands for Human, Hereditary, and Health. So it's really different projects that are funded, different projects on the African continent that are funded by the NIH and the Wellcome Trust. So joining this consortia, going to conferences such as I'm sorry, I don't know much about other developing countries, but I know a little bit more about what's going on in the African continent. So going to conferences such as the African Human Genetics Symposium and that sort of thing. So it's really just about exposure and trying to find ways to work together. And I hope that answers your question adequately. Sorry for the moment.
No, all good, all good. Thank you so much, Dr. Mahara and everyone, Dr. Badamosi, Alexia, Ofure. Really lovely getting to know you guys for this really short time. And also thank you everyone in the audience for attending and engaging. We really appreciate your presence. And thank you again, of course, to our conference sponsors. And last but definitely not least, a huge thanks to our live captioner and sign language interpreters. As a reminder, this event and all of our other events for BIN Week will be available on our YouTube page. And if you haven't yet, join the conversation on social media. Things are definitely continuing there and in the Slack, the BIN22 Slack. And we're at Black In Neuro across all social media platforms. And then for the most up-to-date information on the conference, please check out the conference booklet on our website. And we hope to see you at the rest of our events this week, including, because the day's not over, the NeuroAcrossTheDiaspora keynote session happening at 5 p.m. Eastern Time today. Thank you again, everyone, for attending, and we hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.